Welcome to the bedroom. Today, the bedroom is going to Liberia,
West Africa.
Oh, now, baby, baby. Bet you wanna pipe up, baby, you gon' back down. Oh, now, baby, baby. Give it to me good, babe, like it ain't nobody round. Oh, now, baby, baby. Bet you wanna pipe up, back down. Oh, now, baby, baby. Oh, now, baby, baby. Oh, do you mind to just give a little love, give a little love, shout it.
So the question is from Curtis. Are you working on any program to help gays that are trapped into the customs and norms of society that won't let them free themselves and love who they choose to love?
Yeah, I think to answer this question, we have to talk about ourselves and a little bit more about our story, and some who may have read the story, but those who haven't. I started preaching at 11 years old and have been in church all of my life. In high school, my peers were the youth that I was inspiring and motivating and training to live out their lives, their best lives. I remember even before going to prom, I asked my pastor for permission to go to prom because I was afraid that going into this worldly space that it would somehow contradict my message and the image that I was to exude as a clergy, as an ordained minister. And I say that to give you a sense of the kind of religious pressure I was under growing up. And my grandmothers, both of them are ministers. Dad's mother and my mother's mother, both of them are ministers, and so I've always been in the church. And because of that, I was always afraid to tell people that I was gay.
And my customs were a little different. I was raised in the church all my life, but I would say I had the experience of most black families, black gays. It wasn't that I was a preacher or that my family, I come from a family of preachers, but it was just so the stigma that was associated with homosexuality and religion. And I would say I came out when I was pretty young. I was 16. I actually didn't come out, but I was like thrown out or pulled out from my father. And no telling if he wouldn't have done that, I probably, I don't know where I would have been. Even I would have probably still been in the closet when I met Jonathan.
So when we finally met at Grambling, which was my junior year and Derrick's freshman year.
The end of my freshman year.
The end of Derrick's freshman year. I certainly was definitely in a DL state, closeted for sure, trying to hide and cover every track.
And I wasn't. At that time, I had moved to Louisiana from Missouri. It was my first time being away from home. I was free. I was wild. For real, I was.
And I was very active in school, and so even my senior year, I started the student body president at Grambling, and we really had an interesting year, my senior year, his sophomore year, and we worked very closely together and tried to navigate being closeted at this HBCU and trying to maintain. I was still preaching, and so trying to maintain that, so we even had to get through this process of him coming to hear me preach and feeling somehow...
I was there every time he preached.
Yes.
Every time he preached, I was there.
And then wrestling through that, obviously, not only was society telling us that we were not right, so to speak, but for sure, I know for me, I had those same thoughts about myself. And so for the beginning of our relationship, there was this conversation about whether or not we would ever be together long term. Because at that time, I was still telling myself, I'm not going to hell. And this can't last.
So we were in a relationship where it's like, okay, well, where does it look like? What does it look like in the future? For me, it was very different because I was out, and in a way I was put back in a closet because I had got with Jonathan, and he was DL, so it was like, okay, well, nobody can know, I can't tell my friends, I can't tell my family. So we had to deal with all of that and go through a lot of challenges and hurdles, and really find ways to evolve our love and know that it wasn't because we didn't love each other that we couldn't be public, but it was just because of those society and customs that we're trapped in, like the question addresses. And so, like Jonathan was just saying, we've worked through all those hurdles throughout our life to help advance us and our culture and our people.
And I think it's been those experiences of knowing what it feels like to be boxed and chained in and otherized and dehumanized.
I literally lost the whole going to play sports with my dad and going fishing, going out, us just talking every day. When I did come out, we didn't talk for a couple months around the house. It was very awkward, definitely as a 16-year-old. It was very awkward to walk around your house and your parent is not even communicating with you.
Beyond the church, I was active in the community as well, and so many people looked up to me and were inspired somehow and humbly by what I felt was my calling, and that was to give people life, give people hope. And even in the midst of such a awesome task and calling, I was still in bondage because I was gay and I was afraid to tell anybody. And that was challenging, in addition because I have a very religious family as well. And so all of these notions of righteousness and tenets of qualifications to deem you worthy to be in heaven and to be saved, all of those things I wrestled with and then hated myself. Literally grew up wrestling with suicidal ideation. I remember one time my dad came to school because he had heard from a friend that I had mentioned that I wanted to commit suicide. And even then he came to the school, he was crying. I remember this vividly, but he didn't know why I wanted to commit suicide. I had never expressed why I wanted to commit suicide, and that's because I was someone that I was afraid to tell anyone about. And so I lived certainly my teenage years and my early 20s hiding, being afraid of what others would think about me and who I would let down because they looked up to me. And finally, I think it was going to theology school. When I went to theology school, I began to wrestle and read and research, but even pray and get to know God in a way that I had never gotten to know God. I had realized that what I knew about God and how I had come to know God, it was through other people's expressions of who they thought God was. It was based on what I was taught to believe God was, and it wasn't through my own searching, through my own loving and experiences. I remember I used to go to the altar and pray and cry and ask God to deliver me of my homosexuality. I used to drink out of bottles of olive oil. We call it anointed oil in the church. So we would anoint this oil and I would drink it hoping that it would purge and cleanse me of the gayness. And it never happened. And it never happened. And God began to deal with me in grad school, and I began to deal with God. And I began to ask God why God didn't love me. And God told me that God did love me. And that God does love me. And that God loves everyone who feels like I feel, who loves like I love.
I do want to let y'all know that we know what you're going through. The first step is to choose safety. Always consider your circumstances when you are coming out or when you are just being yourself. And we know there are certain places where it can be safer than others.
These societal norms and customs have been around for a while, and so certainly we can relate. And we want to tell you, for one, consider your circumstances and your safety. when thinking about coming out, when thinking about how you live out your life and how you express yourself, take care of yourself and be mindful of the world we live in. But most of all, even in that consideration, love yourself, be authentic. That is what the world needs more. People who are willing to say, this is who I am. Because if we refuse and we shy away from doing that, we'll never see the progress that our society so badly needs, so that our children don't have to deal with these circumstances and don't have to have these conversations again. But beyond all, your happiness is so key. It's so important that you be happy and that be your number one priority. But while thinking about that, we encourage you to think about your safety.
Mm-hmm. And you only have one life to live. And like Jonathan was just saying, choose happiness. It's not that long that we're here. And in everything that we do, be authentic, be happy, know that you are loved, know that nothing is wrong with you. That's one thing that society continues to put pressure on us, that something is wrong with us. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that you know in your heart that nothing is wrong with you at all. You are loved, you are beautiful,
Yes.
And you have to continue to be true to yourself. Yes. And once you find that peace within your heart, everything will feel much better.
And I'm going to actually give you a little hope too. And there was a time when I thought that people who I came out to were going to flip. Mm-hmm. And
I used to tell them that they weren't going to flip.
And they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out, they didn't. And so I want to give you hope that there are people around you who love you, that you might be afraid to tell them who you really are. Don't be afraid. So that for sure is what's very critical, is that you not be afraid.
And so that's why I love the work that we do with our company, the Leadership Brainery. We go around the country training students and inspiring leaders to be their best selves, to be their authentic selves, to love themselves and to lead their communities in the best way they know how. So we do that. I'm very involved in public health. I'm doing some work with Harvard University with HIV and AIDS. So definitely interested in doing some international work. So we'll be doing that definitely in Africa soon.
I'm in my second year of law school, and so I'm thinking about these issues all the time, about identity and societies and the way they function and how they oppress other people, and what we need to do to dismantle systems of oppression. I work as a fellow at Harvard Law School at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice, thinking about race and justice and identity as well, intersectionality as well. And we are very, very committed, which is why we've even developed the bedroom, so that we can engage in dialogue
and we
with
can have
each
these
and every one of
conversations
you.
with you. So
Exactly.
So it's great.
So we're committed in every way, since beginning of this union that we've had our entire lives as well, about thinking about how we can contribute to making this world a better place.
And again, that's why the Leadership Brainery is important, because we also want you to know that you can go out, you can advocate, you can speak on behalf of the community. We know that you are very vocal. We see you a lot on our comments and under our pictures, so we love you and we thank you. We know you are a great voice for our society and our community as well, so thank you.
So know that you can, know that you are, know that you will, and this world appreciates you and this world needs you, and we love you. And to all of you, welcome to the bedroom. This has been an incredible time, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you.
Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at @thebedroom_JD.
Yes, like and subscribe. Y'all, let's stay on this journey.
And make sure you submit the questions in the DM.
And so until next time.
Until next time.
Y'all love bugs.
Bye-bye.
Be good. Bye.